The final tab for the ArriveCan app may be anyone's guess. It was supposed to cost around $80,000, but according to the Auditor General, Karen Hogan, it may be as high as $60 million. Now, to chat about this in more detail is political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilley, who joins us once again from the Big Smoke. Now, Brian, the Auditor General says consultants received close to $60 million, but in fact, it may be more?
Oh, it's definitely more than $60 million, Hal, because what she was able to determine, and remember, before this, as you said, initial cost was $80,000, and maybe the government had lowballed that, but eventually it got to $54 million. And that's what the opposition kept asking about. Why with this $54 million app? Why did it cost so much? And then Karen Hogan comes out, the Auditor General, and says, well, actually, the consultants alone got $59.5 million.
Wow.
Okay, so that's just the consultants. Now, think about all the civil servants that also worked on this app. How many? I don't know. We don't have that figure. But we do know, thanks to an order paper question that was highlighted by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation last week, 8 different bureaucrats, executive level bureaucrats, just from the Public Health Agency, were assigned to this. 5 of them got bonuses in the first year of the project, even though the app didn't work. 6 of them got bonuses in the second year, even though the app didn't work. Canada Border Services Agency, we don't know how many of those executives got bonuses because we don't have the answer to that question yet. So you've got 8 executives just from one department working on it. How many people under them? Then you've got the larger department that was more in charge of it than Public Health, Canada Border Services Agency. So of course, this cost more than $60 million. But as Karen Hogan, the Auditor General, said, the accounting, the paperwork was so bad that she doesn't know what this actually cost.
Yeah, she said the rules were not followed, Brian. Now, you've called for at least 2 cabinet ministers to be fired over this, but who will actually take the fall?
Well, probably no one. That's the sad part. I don't think that Justin Trudeau is going to um, throw anyone under the bus over this. But the right thing to do for these ministers is just to submit your resignation because they failed to do their jobs. I'm talking about Bill Blair, who was the Minister of Public Safety at the time. He should have known about this. And if he didn't know about it, he should have been asking questions. This was a major project. This was a priority for the government. You should have been asking questions about this. And the fact that you didn't is a major issue. He was the public safety minister in charge of Canada Border Services Agency. Patty Hajdu is the other one who should be fired. She was the Minister of Public Health, the Minister of Health at the time, and in charge of the Public Health Agency of Canada. Now, they've both been moved off to other departments. Blair is in charge of defense now for reasons that I don't know because he's been a failure at every portfolio he's held at the federal level. And I don't think he was a good police chief in Toronto. And Hajdu is now Minister of Indigenous Services. And, she shouldn't even be in that. They should be fired. The fact that they won't be means that come the next election, Canadians have to hold the whole government to account and fire them. You can't have a project go this far off the rails and not have somebody held to account. If this is how bad it is on one small project, an app, how bad is it on the rest? We know that government spending has gone through the roof, that the number of consultants has gone through the roof, the number of civil servants hired has gone through the roof. Your services are not 40 to 50% better than they were when Justin Trudeau took office. In fact, in many areas, the government simply isn't working. So that's a sign that they need to go because they're not doing their jobs.
Brian, I have to admit that my wife and I use the ArriveCan app like many other Canadians when we travel to a tropical destination a couple of years ago. But is the ArriveCan app still being used today?
It is, and it's being promoted. Now, my understanding, I have not used it on my last few trips out of the country. I've just refused out of principle, and maybe I'm being stubborn, but my understanding is that it works now. I've used the American equivalent. They've got what's called mobile passport control, and you basically upload your information. By the time you get there, and you get a special line, shh, don't tell anyone, you get up to the front of the line, and you're through in moments because they've already got the information that they need. They ask you a couple of additional questions, and you're through. That's what this should be for ArriveCan, but wasn't back during the pandemic. And I know that the The answer from the Trudeau Liberals was, well, it was a pandemic, don't you know, and we had to do things quickly. That's not an acceptable answer, Hal. By the time they started working on this, it was October 2020. It wasn't March 2020. We weren't in full panic mode at that point. And many of the problems happened well after we already had vaccines. So, this idea that, we can just forgive it all because it was a pandemic doesn't hold water. And the bureaucrats have been pushing for this type of mobile passport control app for some time. They used the pandemic as an excuse, and then they failed to follow any rules. And the politicians who are supposed to oversee them didn't do their jobs. That's why Bill Blair, Patty Hajdu have to be fired. And if Justin Trudeau won't do it, we should fire him.
Brian, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau used some very colorful language recently responding to Bell Media's layoff announcement of around 4,800 employees. Now, you say he's actually playing the media and Canadians should be upset with him over his media policies. Can you explain?
Well, so first off, the 4,800 layoffs, that's not Bell Media, but that's what he makes it sound like. And that's what the government continues to push. The 4,800 layoffs are Bell Canada enterprises. Less than 10% of that, so less than 480, are actually in Bell Media. Most of them are engineers. They're software designers. They are administrative clerks. They are people who would lay the fiber cable, the linemen that would lay the fiber cable to your home or to the new development that you hope to move into one day. Those are most of the people losing their jobs. But Justin Trudeau used this and tried to say that this was all Bell Media and then attacked them. While the simple fact is that a lot of the policies that the Trudeau government has either supported or brought in are actually hurting the media. So look at Bill C-18. That's the Online News Act. If they were not so aggressive, Facebook would not have left the Canadian marketplace. We are, as far as I understand, the only Western country where Facebook has left the marketplace completely. You cannot share Canadian news on Facebook or Instagram in Canada. You can get that same content if you're in the States. One of my colleagues was just down in Florida and said, all of a sudden I'm seeing Canadian news links in my Facebook feed. And they can't believe it. But they've exited here. There could have been a better solution, but they were antagonistic. You look at the regulations on the CRTC for cable and satellite providers. Well, what are people doing these days, Hal? They're cutting the cord. They're going to streamers. They're going to Netflix, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, all these different streamers. Well, most of them are not paying the same taxes in Canada that the cable and satellite providers are. And they said, well, wait a minute. Like, why are we paying the taxes when they're not? Either cut ours or make them pay the same. That's a valid argument. Have a level playing field for people offering the same product, but they wouldn't do that. You look at where the Trudeau government puts their advertising. 71% of federal government advertising went into digital. They spent as much on search engine advertising with Google as they did with every TV station and network in the country last fiscal year. It's unbelievable. So they say one thing, they do another, and their policies are actually about keeping in place the old system that isn't working anymore in favor of, developing something new that will change with the times. So the Trudeau government is absolutely part of the problem. They just don't see it that way.
And circling back to Bill 18 for just a moment, C18, Brian, it's true. We built up organically close to 45,000 followers on our Facebook page, which isn't bad for our news organization, but a lot of our Canadian viewers, they're not seeing the content, so they're going to YouTube, following us on X, formerly Twitter, and so forth, and our website as well. Now, Brian, NDP MP Charlie Angus last week announced a new private member's bill to deal with what he's calling misleading advertising. Now, you say that this is really an attack on free speech and our oil and gas industry? Tell me more about Bill C-372.
Well, it's an attack on speaking the truth as well. Charlie Angus's bill would make it illegal for someone to say that one fossil fuel is cleaner, better for the environment than the other. Now, I'm going to say a true fact to you right now. And under Charlie Angus's bill, if this had been passed, and it's never going to pass, thankfully, but if it was passed and became law, what I'm about to tell you would be illegal. And that is simply this, Hal. Heating your home with natural gas is better for the environment than heating your home with an oil furnace or burning coal. That should not be controversial. That should not be illegal. That is a statement of fact. Even the Trudeau government's carbon tax regime uh, puts a lower price on emissions from natural gas than it does from oil or coal because it is a cleaner burning fuel. Not just on greenhouse gas emissions, by any standards, it's a cleaner burning fuel. But Angus's bill would make that illegal. It would make it illegal for you to get any sort of loyalty reward points. So, I've got an Esso near me, and so I can get PC Optimum points. Well, that would become illegal under this. There are, just advertising your gasoline brand and saying, come to my service station instead of the other one. That would become illegal. And then they would have regulations limiting the size of your sign at your gas station in terms of your brand and the price. They would allow you to have your brand and your price for now. Uh, but eventually, just like smoking, they would take that away. So you couldn't even have your brand, maybe just your price, for a gas station. It is an utterly insane bill that has no place in this country, but Charlie Angus thinks that this is what we need at this moment.
CBC President Catherine Tate has been in the news quite a bit lately, talking about the fact that bonuses are not off the table for executives with a public broadcaster, even after the announcement that hundreds would be laid off. Now, Brian, Tate is under more fire here over expenses. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, after lecturing MPs like Rachel Thomas, who questioned her about the bonuses, and she told all the MPs, "Oh no, we don't give bonuses. We give at-risk pay and performance pay. That's different than a bonus." No, it's not. She's under fire because she was racking up expenses. She likes to fly business class. She likes to fly first class. And so going down to LA, she's flying business class. Going to Europe, she's flying business class. $120,000 in expenses. She's crying poor for the entire network. And meanwhile, she's out there flying in at the jet setting class. She is still keeping bonuses on the table for executives while saying that, regular people have to lose their jobs. 800 positions are being eliminated. Now, about 200 of those, when they announced this, 200 were already vacant. And lots of companies will do that, right? You try and say, all right, we're not going to replace the people that have already left, and we'll shuffle those around, and then we're going to cut jobs. But they're still cutting 600 actual people. So, how can you justify giving bonuses? And I would say the same thing about my company. And the CEO of Post Media knows that. I would denounce that and say that's wrong. But that's what CBC is doing. It defies logic for this government entity to continually say that they have no money and then find ways to spend money well outside of the core mandate while saying, well, we can't fulfill our core mandate because we don't have enough money.
Brian, the latest polls show that despite the attacks on Pierre Poilievre, the Trudeau government is not winning back any voters. How bad are things getting for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
So a couple of polls out recently, Hal. One was from Abacus Data, and it showed a 19-point lead for the Conservatives. There's only been two that I think in the last several months that have shown that. One was Nanos, and one was Abacus. So right now, Abacus says that the Conservatives are ahead nationally, 43% voter support to 24% for the Liberals, and 18% for the NDP. For the last 6 months, the Liberals have been closer to the NDP than they have been to the Conservatives, and the NDP is not doing well. Then there's another poll from Nanos that just looked at, well, should Justin Trudeau stick around? And the answer was, we don't think so. The answer was I believe it was only 3% think he should lead the Liberal Party into the next election. 39% thought he should go. A bunch didn't know. Some said, well, another leader might help. Very much a dog's breakfast, but not many people supporting Justin Trudeau on sticking around. So, he spent a lot of time attacking Pierre Poilievre, trying to compare him to Donald Trump. Both Nanos and Abacus came out with polls this week saying, you know what, these attacks, they're not working. In fact, let me give you this quick data point to explain how bad it is. The Abacus poll had the Conservatives ahead of the Liberals in Quebec. Now, it was only 1 point. It was 26% for the Conservatives, in second place behind the Bloc, just over 30, and then the Liberals at 25. That's margin of error stuff. But the fact that we're even talking about the idea that the Conservatives would be ahead of the Liberals in Quebec in this day and age, that is something damning for them. Can you imagine me saying, well, how the Liberals are ahead of the Conservatives in Alberta? That would be shocking, and that would be a wake-up call for the Conservatives. This should be a wake-up call for the Liberals. Sadly, doesn't look like Justin Trudeau's getting the message that he should follow in his father's footsteps and take that walk in the snow.
Political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.